See, in life, you start to notice the difference between what people chase and what people respect. A lot of times, the ones who stay too long, the ones who beg for attention, the ones who don't know their own value, they get overlooked. But the man who knows when to walk away, that's the one she remembers. That's the one she wants. Because walking away ain't weakness, it's strength. It's discipline. It's knowing you don't gotta prove yourself in every moment. You don't gotta fight battles that ain't worth your energy. The real test of a man ain't how long he can stay in chaos. It's how well he can choose peace over pride. That's what separates a leader from a follower, a builder from a dreamer, a king from a pawn. When a man walks away, it ain't about running from responsibility. It's about moving toward a bigger vision. He ain't pressed to be everywhere. He ain't desperate for approval. And he ain't scared of silence. That type of man carries power because he knows his worth. He don't gotta raise his voice. He don't gotta chase validation. His presence speaks. His absence speaks louder. And that silence, that's where respect grows. She sees that. She feels it. A woman can recognize the difference between a man who clings out of fear and a man who lets go out of strength. The man who walks away leaves an imprint because he chooses himself. He chooses growth. He chooses legacy over temporary attention. And when he does that, he moves different. He attracts different. That's why she wants him. Not because he played games, not because he manipulated the moment, because he had the courage to detach, to move forward, to not let his pride or ego chain him to a place that no longer serves him. Walking away requires vision. You got to see beyond the moment. You got to know that your time, your energy, your spirit is priceless. Too many men waste themselves proving points to people who never cared. Too many men stay stuck where they should have been gone. The one who knows when to leave, that's the one who commands respect without saying a word. And deep down, she don't want the man who's begging, pleading, trying to hold on to what's already slipping. She wants the man who can stand tall even in silence, the man who can walk away with his dignity intact, his focus unshaken, his purpose unbent. That's the type of energy that can't be ignored. That's the type of energy that makes her second guess, that makes her admire, makes her realize she wasn't looking for someone who stays at any cost. She was looking for someone who knows their cost. Because truth is, the man who walks away ain't really leaving. He's leveling up. And that type of move, that's magnetic. That's respect. That's power. Walking away is strength, not weakness. Too many times people confuse silence with surrender, distance with defeat, or detachment with fear. They look at someone stepping away from a situation and assume it's because that person couldn't handle it, couldn't fight, couldn't endure. But the reality is the opposite. It takes far more power to remove yourself from a space that no longer serves you than to remain there just to prove something. Strength is not always in staying. Sometimes strength lives in the decision to leave, in the ability to protect your peace, your energy, and your vision by stepping away from battles that would only drain you. You gotta understand, the world teaches us to equate toughness with holding on. From childhood, we're told to fight through everything, to stick it out, to never back down no matter what. And while that mindset builds resilience, it also creates chains. It locks people into situations where they confuse suffering with loyalty, endurance with growth. The strongest ones are not always the ones still standing in the fight. Sometimes the strongest ones are the ones who had the courage to walk away before that fight consumed them. Think about it. When you stay somewhere just to prove you can survive it, who are you really proving it to? Most times, the people you're trying to impress aren't even paying attention. They're not giving you respect. They're not offering you value. And they're not adding to your journey. You're fighting for a trophy that doesn't exist. But when you walk away, when you say, I choose me over this, that's when you take control. That's when you show strength, because self-respect will always outweigh outside validation. Walking away requires vision. It requires discipline. It requires you to silence your ego when it screams, stay and prove yourself. It requires you to silence your fear when it whispers, "If you leave, you'll lose everything." It requires you to trust that by letting go, you're making room for something greater. That's real power, because power is not clinging, it's choosing. Power is not being trapped, it's being free enough to move on your own terms. Freedom takes courage. In relationships, in business, in friendships, in the streets, this truth repeats itself. The one who keeps chasing, begging, forcing, or proving ends up losing themselves. The one who walks away when respect is missing, when the energy is toxic, when the value is gone, that one keeps their soul intact. And that's strength. Because the strongest battles aren't fought with fists or with words. They're fought internally. They're fought in those quiet moments when you have to ask yourself, do I love myself enough to leave? Do I trust myself enough to step forward without knowing what's next? Do I respect myself enough to stop letting situations drain me? Answering yes to those questions is where true strength lies. A man who walks away doesn't do it because he's weak. He does it because he's mastered himself. He's not reacting out of impulse. He's not being controlled by pride. He's not desperate to be right. He knows that not every argument is worth winning. Not every fight is worth fighting. Not every opportunity is worth chasing. He understands that his energy is currency and he spends it wisely. Take strength, because the easy thing to do is stay and argue, stay and fight, stay and exhaust yourself proving a point. The hard thing to do is walk away with your head high and your dignity unshaken. When you walk away, people may call you weak. They may label you as someone who gave up, but labels are just noise. What matters is the truth you carry within yourself. And the truth is, weakness is staying where you're not respected. Weakness is forcing yourself into spaces that don't fit you anymore. Weakness is needing validation from people who never valued you in the first place. Strength is saying, I don't need this to define me. I know who I am without it. That's the kind of strength that can't be taken from you, because it's not built on other people. It's built on self. It's easy to confuse noise for power. People who scream the loudest, who stay the longest, who fight the hardest, they get attention. Attention and respect are not the same thing. Walking away is quieter, but it's deeper. It creates silence that forces people to reflect. It creates absence that makes your presence more valuable. It creates a space where you are no longer accessible to those who didn't value you when you were right there, and that silence speaks louder than any argument ever could. That's why walking away is strength. It changes the energy of the entire situation. There's also wisdom in walking away. Wisdom to recognize that not every road is yours to walk. Wisdom to understand that not everyone you meet deserves to stay in your life. Wisdom to know that every opportunity isn't aligned with your purpose. And wisdom takes time. It takes scars. It takes lessons. But once you have it, you realize that walking away is not just about leaving something behind. It's about choosing where you're going. It's about redirecting your energy toward building instead of breaking, toward growing instead of shrinking, toward creating instead of destroying. That's the highest level of strength, because it's not reactive, it's intentional. Strength is not just measured by how much you can take, it's measured by how much you can let go. Think about chains. The stronger you are, the easier it is to break free. But if you don't use that strength, if you stay tied up, then the chain wins. Walking away is breaking the chain. It's proving that nothing outside of you has control over your movement, your decisions, your peace. That's a strength that can't be faked, because it comes from within. Presence is power. Absence speaks louder. When someone stands in a room, you feel their energy before they even say a word. That's presence. It's the weight of self-belief, the gravity of confidence, the vibration of someone who knows who they are and doesn't need to announce it. Presence can shift the air. It can command attention. It can make people pause and take notice. What most don't realize is that absence can do even more, because when you're gone and people still feel you, when you're no longer speaking but your silence echoes louder than words, When you're not in the room, but your name still circulates, that's a deeper level of power. That's absence making noise in a way presence never could. See, presence is what gets attention. Absence is what demands reflection. When you're around, people might take you for granted. They might underestimate you, overlook you, think your energy will always be available. The moment you remove yourself, the moment you're no longer accessible, that's when people recognize what you brought to the table. That's when they feel the void. And that void has a way of speaking louder than anything you could have said while you were there. It forces people to confront the reality of your value. And sometimes that's the only way they truly understand it. There's strength in knowing how to balance both. You can walk into a space and command it with your presence. You also know when to step back and let your absence teach the lesson. Too many people chase visibility, thinking the more they're seen, the more powerful they are. Power doesn't live in constant exposure. Power lives in scarcity. The rarest gems are the most valuable, not because they're loud, but because they're limited. Presence is shining. Absence is priceless. Think about it in relationships. When you're always there, always available, always giving, people can get comfortable. They start to see your consistency as a guarantee, not a gift. They might start expecting it, even demanding it, forgetting the value of it. But when you step away, when your calls stop coming, when your presence disappears, it forces them to sit with the silence. It forces them to notice what's missing. Absence turns your value into a mirror. They're left staring at the reflection of what they lost, and it hits different. That lesson can't be taught with words. It can only be felt in the space your absence leaves behind. Presence is the introduction. Absence is the reminder. Presence says, "Here I am." Absence says, "Now see what happens without me." That second message often resonates deeper. People may ignore your presence, but they can't ignore your absence. It lingers. It replays in their mind. It creates a gap they can't fill with substitutes. And in that gap, they realize your worth. In business, presence is how you build momentum, but absence is how you build demand. If a brand is everywhere all the time, people get numb to it. But when something steps away, when it becomes harder to access, the desire for it grows. Scarcity creates value. The same principle applies to people. When you're always accessible, your presence starts to feel ordinary. But when you master absence, you transform into something rare, something people crave, pressure, something people chase. Absence also carries discipline. It's not easy to pull back when you know you could dominate by being present. It's not easy to step away when you know you could win the argument. Shine in the spotlight, prove your point. But that discipline, choosing absence over noise, shows a higher level of control. It says you don't need to be everywhere to matter. You don't need to be seen every second to be remembered. You've built a presence strong enough that even when you're not there, your impact still resonates. Presence can fill a space. Absence can haunt it. Think about the people you've lost, not just in relationships, but in life. Their absence has a power their presence never could. It changes the way you move, the way you think, the way you value things. That's the ultimate proof that absence speaks louder. It's not just about missing someone. It's about how their absence reshapes everything around you. The silence they leave behind is heavier than any sound they could have made. When you understand this balance, you stop trying to overextend yourself. You stop trying to always prove, always show up, always be seen. Instead, you learn to be intentional with your presence and strategic with your absence. You show up when it matters, but you also step back when it's time to let silence do the work. That's a mastery most people never reach because it requires patience, discipline, and confidence. It requires you to trust that your absence won't erase you. It will elevate you. And that's why absence is often feared. People are afraid that if they step away, they'll be forgotten. They fear the silence will erase their voice. Those who truly carry weight don't need to fear absence. They know absence won't erase them. It will amplify them. It will separate them from the noise. It will highlight their uniqueness. It will carve out a space where their value can't be ignored. That's why absence speaks louder, because it filters out all distractions and leaves only the essence of your impact. Presence and absence are two sides of the same coin. One introduces your energy, the other confirms it. One shows the world what you bring, the other proves it can't be replaced. Together, they form a cycle of respect, demand, and recognition. To master life, relationships, and legacy, you have to master both. Presence is power, but absence speaks louder. Respect comes from discipline, desperation. Too often, people think respect is something you chase, something you beg for, something you force out of others by demanding it or fighting for it. They believe that if they talk louder, move tougher, act more aggressive, people will bow down and acknowledge them. But real respect doesn't work that way. Respect isn't about how much you can force someone to see your worth. It's about how consistent you are in living by your principles. Discipline builds respect because discipline shows strength, self-control, and purpose. Desperation destroys respect because desperation reveals weakness, insecurity, and lack of direction. When you look at people who are respected across time, it's not because they were always screaming for recognition. It's because they lived a life that demanded recognition through their actions, their focus, and their persistence. They didn't let their emotions pull them in every direction. They didn't move with chaos. They moved with clarity. They had a code they lived by, and they stuck to it even when it wasn't easy. That's discipline, and that discipline made people admire them, even those who didn't agree with them. You can disagree with a person, but if you see they live by their principles no matter what, you respect them. Desperation, on the other hand, looks like constantly needing validation. It's the man who has to prove himself in every argument. It's the person who can't let go of small battles because their ego can't handle not being acknowledged. It's the individual who bends their values just to get approval from others. Type of energy never earns respect. At best, it earns temporary attention. People might entertain you in the moment, but behind closed doors, they don't admire you. They see the cracks. They see the insecurity. They see that you're moving from a place of need, not power. Discipline is quiet, but it's undeniable. Waking up every day and staying committed to your craft, that builds respect. Saying no to distractions when everybody else is chasing instant gratification, that builds respect. Staying calm when people try to bait you into losing your temper, that builds respect. Because you're proving anything to them, but because you're showing mastery over yourself. People might not clap for it in the moment, but deep down they recognize it. They recognize the patience it takes, the focus it takes, the strength it takes, and that recognition grows into respect. In relationships, the same principle applies. You don't gain respect by begging someone to see your value. You gain respect by carrying yourself with dignity, by keeping boundaries, by not tolerating disrespect, by walking away when the situation no longer aligns with your worth. That's discipline. It's not easy to enforce those boundaries. It's not easy to leave when emotions are involved. But when you do, the message is clear: I value myself too much to be treated less than I deserve. That statement requires no words. The discipline of your actions says it all. And over time, what makes people respect you? Desperation in relationships looks like holding on when you should let go, over giving when the other person isn't reciprocating, lowering your standards just to keep someone close. That might keep them around for a while, but it will never make them respect you. In fact, it does the opposite. It shows them you don't even respect yourself, so why should they? Respect always starts within. If you don't discipline yourself to live by your own values, nobody else is going to honor them either. Discipline also means patience. It means you're not rushing outcomes, not chasing validation, not needing results right away. You trust the process. You trust that the work you're putting in, the choices you're making, the standards you're keeping will all pay off in time. People see that. They may not say anything, but they notice, and they compare it to those who move with desperation. who cut corners, who switch up every time the road gets tough. The difference becomes obvious. One is respected, the other is just tolerated. Think about leaders. The ones who lead with desperation, always yelling, always demanding, always forcing, might get obedience, but they don't get respect. As soon as their power fades, people turn on them because there was never real admiration, just fear or convenience. But the leaders who move with discipline, who stay consistent, who don't compromise their values for quick wins, those are the ones who leave legacies. Even their enemies respect them because they know they can't be shaken by noise or desperation. They know they're rooted in something deeper. Discipline is about self-mastery. Respect comes from watching someone master themselves in a world where most people can't. It's rare to see someone say no when temptation is in front of them. Rare to see someone stay focused when distractions surround them. Rare to see someone stay humble when success comes. That rarity commands respect. People might not even like you, but they'll respect the way you move because they know it takes strength to live that way. Desperation is about lack of control. It's moving based on fear of being forgotten, fear of being overlooked, fear of being rejected. When fear drives you, respect runs from you. People sense it. They might use you, they might entertain you, but they'll never respect you because respect is rooted in strength. Desperation is rooted in weakness. The moment you start begging for it, you've already lost it. Respect also isn't about perfection. Discipline doesn't mean never making mistakes. It means owning your mistakes, learning from them, and still holding yourself accountable to your values. That's what people respect. Not someone who pretends to be flawless. Someone who's disciplined enough to keep going, to keep growing, to keep standing on what they believe even after setbacks. That type of resilience is magnetic. The truth is respect takes time. It doesn't come overnight. Desperation wants it immediately. Desperation wants the applause right now, the recognition right now, the validation right now. But discipline knows it's a marathon. Discipline knows that day after day, action after action, choice after choice, you're building something that can't be taken away. And when it finally shows, the respect is real because it was earned through consistency. That's the difference. Desperation crumbles because it's shallow. Discipline lasts because it's rooted in something solid. She values the man who chooses self-worth over validation, a man who stands on his own principles without bending just to be accepted carries a weight that cannot be ignored. He doesn't move for applause. He doesn't move for approval. He doesn't move for likes or temporary recognition. He moves because he knows his worth, and that worth is not up for negotiation. Too many men compromise themselves trying to gain validation from people who don't even respect them. They chase approval, they lower their standards, they perform for an audience that will never truly value them. And in the end, they lose both themselves and the respect they were seeking. But the man who centers his life around self-worth instead of outside validation, that's the man who leaves an imprint. Validation is temporary. It shifts with moods, with opinions, with trends. People applaud you today and forget you tomorrow. They cheer for you in one moment and criticize you in the next. If your identity is built on that, then you'll always be unstable. You'll always be chasing the next compliment, the next hand clap, the next sign of approval. That desperation shows, and it's never respected. A man grounded in self-worth, on the other hand, doesn't need that outside noise to feel secure. He knows his value whether people acknowledge it or not. He doesn't need to prove it because it's already proven within himself. That's what she values. A woman may be flattered by a man who showers her with constant attempts at validation, but she's drawn to the man who doesn't need to lose himself in order to gain her attention. She recognizes the difference between desperation and confidence. Confidence comes from knowing you're enough without the crowd cheering. Confidence comes from setting boundaries, holding standards, being afraid to walk away from anything that doesn't align with your worth. That type of energy commands respect. The man who chooses self-worth over validation moves different. He doesn't argue just to be right. He doesn't compete with others just to be seen. He doesn't compromise his principles for temporary acceptance. He lives in a way that reflects inner strength. That strength is magnetic. She sees that he values himself, and because of that, she values him too. Respect starts within. If you don't respect yourself, no one else will. If you don't believe in your own worth, no one else can either. Validation is loud. It shouts, it begs, it demands attention. Self-worth is quiet. It doesn't need to scream because it already knows. It's the difference between someone who constantly needs to prove they're valuable and someone who simply lives like they are. When a man carries self-worth, it shows in his decisions, his posture, his silence. He doesn't have to announce it. It's evident in the way he moves. That's why she's drawn to him, because his worth isn't dependent on her approval. It's already established. She values the man who can say no, the man who doesn't bend just to please, the man who doesn't stay in situations that drain him, the man who doesn't chase where he's not appreciated. Discipline shows her he's not living for outside validation. He's living for his own standards. And in that, he sets the tone for how others treat him. People treat you based on what you allow. If you allow disrespect just to be accepted, that becomes your reality. But if you hold yourself to a higher standard, if you move with self-respect, then people have no choice but to rise to that level or remove themselves. Either way, your worth remains intact. Validation often disguises itself as love, but it's not love, it's approval. And approval is conditional. Self-worth, on the other hand, is unconditional. Conditional. It doesn't depend on how others feel about you. It doesn't waver when people leave or when opinions change. That's what she admires, because she knows a man grounded in self-worth won't crumble when life tests him. He won't lose himself when circumstances shift. He'll remain centered. And that stability is rare. A man chasing validation is easy to manipulate. People can control him by giving or withholding approval. He becomes a puppet to the applause of others. But a man rooted in self-worth is unshakable. He's not controlled by compliments or criticism. He listens, but he doesn't live by it. That independence, that strength, freedom, that's what makes him stand out. That's what makes her see him differently from the rest. Choosing self-worth over validation requires courage. It means you're willing to be misunderstood. You're willing to walk away when others think you should stay. You're willing to stand alone if that's what it takes to stay true to yourself. Most people can't do that because they fear being alone. They fear not being liked. They fear rejection. But the man who has built his identity on self-worth is not afraid of solitude. He understands that solitude is better than selling out. Principle gives him a power that no outside approval can replace. It also shows up in the way he pursues his goals. The man chasing validation might chase trends, do what's popular, or move with the crowd just to get recognition. But the man of self-worth stays focused on his vision, even when nobody else sees it. He doesn't need people to understand his path in order to walk it. Focus is respected because it shows he's not easily swayed. He's not chasing applause, he's chasing purpose, and she can feel that difference. She knows when a man is trying to win her over just to validate himself, and when a man is standing in his worth regardless of whether she accepts him or not. The first one feels needy. The second one feels solid, and women are drawn to solidity, to security, to strength that doesn't depend on external approval. That's why she values the man who chooses self-worth over validation, because she knows his foundation is unshakable. Self-worth is the foundation of true respect, and validation is the mask of insecurity. One builds real connection, the other builds temporary illusions. One is rooted in strength, the other in fear. A man who chooses self-worth over validation doesn't just attract respect, he commands it without asking. That's why she values him, because she can sense that he knows himself, and there's nothing more powerful than that. Walking away is leveling up, not giving up. Too many people see departure as defeat. as if stepping away means you've lost something or surrendered to the situation. But the truth is, walking away is often the highest form of strength. Because it means you've outgrown the space you were once in. It means you've recognized that staying no longer benefits your growth or your vision or your peace. It means you're choosing the harder road of self-respect and evolution instead of the easier road of comfort and stagnation. Walking away is not about weakness. It's about maturity, discipline, and clarity. When you walk away, you're not just leaving behind a person, a job, or a situation. You're leaving behind the version of yourself that tolerated less than what you deserve. You're shedding an old skin, old pattern, and an old story. You're saying to yourself and to the world, I am worth more than this, and I will not stay small just to fit in. That's not giving up, that's leveling up. Giving up is when you stop chasing growth. Leveling up is when you refuse to settle for anything less than alignment. The difference between giving up and leveling up is intent. Giving up is rooted in defeat. It says, I can't do this anymore. Leveling up is rooted in strength. It says, I don't need this anymore. Giving up is surrendering to circumstances. Leveling up is rising above them. Difference is everything. When you walk away with intention, you're not abandoning the journey. You're elevating it. You're moving toward a higher version of yourself, a clearer vision of your purpose, and a more powerful expression of your worth. People might not understand it in the moment. They'll say you quit. They'll say you left too soon. They'll say you should have stayed and fought longer. But that's because most people are attached to comfort. They equate endurance with strength, even when that endurance is slowly killing them. They'd rather stay where it's familiar, even if it's toxic, because leaving requires courage. Walking away requires you to face the unknown, and most people fear that. The man who walks away knows that unknown is where growth happens. He knows he can't level up if he stays chained to the same cycles. Think about the man who refuses to leave a relationship that no longer holds respect. He thinks staying makes him loyal, but in reality, it makes him stuck. It makes him shrink himself just to keep the connection alive. But the man who walks away, the one who chooses peace over chaos, that man is leveling up. He's not running from love. He's redefining it. He's saying, I know my value, and if this space doesn't honor it, I'm not afraid to leave. That act doesn't make him weaker. It makes him stronger because he has proven that he can stand alone if necessary. The same applies in business. Walking away from a deal, a job, or an opportunity that compromises your values is not losing. It's leveling up. It's saying you believe in your long-term vision more than the short-term reward. It's saying you'd rather build something solid than settle for something that looks good on the surface but doesn't align with your purpose. That type of decision takes vision because it means you're choosing the marathon over the sprint. People chasing validation will call it foolish. People rooted in self-worth will recognize it as power. Walking away also demands discipline. It's easy to stay where you're comfortable, even if that comfort is slowly draining you. It's easy to keep fighting battles that don't matter just to prove you're tough. Discipline tells you when enough is enough. Discipline tells you that your energy is too valuable to waste, your time is too limited to give away, and your peace is too sacred to compromise. Discipline gives you the strength to leave, even when your emotions tell you to stay. And that's what makes walking away a level up move, because it proves you're not ruled by impulse. You're ruled by principle. When you walk away, you create space, and that space is where elevation happens. As long as you stay in environments that don't serve you, there's no room for better opportunities to come. But the moment you leave, you open the door for growth. You allow yourself to attract people, places and paths that are aligned with who you're becoming, not who you were. Walking away is like clearing the soil. You remove what no longer belongs so that something new can take root. It's leveling up. Some will confuse your decision with weaknesses, but that's because they measure strength by how long you can endure pain. Real strength is measured by how clearly you can recognize when it's time to rise above it. Walking away doesn't mean you couldn't handle the situation. It means the situation couldn't handle the man you're becoming. It couldn't contain the vision, the discipline, the growth you're stepping into. And rather than lowering yourself to fit into it, you chose to leave it behind. That's the mindset of someone who levels up. Walking away also creates respect. When people see that you're not afraid to leave what doesn't serve you, they understand that you can't be manipulated. They understand you won't trade your dignity for attention. They understand you won't compromise your standards just to fit in. Earns more respect than trying to hold on to everything. A man who clings looks desperate. A man who walks away looks powerful. And that power isn't in the leaving itself. It's in what the leaving represents. It represents growth. It represents self-worth. It represents vision. It takes wisdom to know the difference between giving up and leveling up. Giving up comes from exhaustion. Leveling up comes from evolution. Giving up shrinks your life. Leveling up expands it. One closes doors, the other opens them. When you walk away with purpose, you're not leaving something behind. You're stepping into something greater. You're not abandoning your path. You're elevating it. Walking away is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new chapter that could never be written if you stayed stuck in the old one.